Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we are going to be covering a lot of basketball, including some WNBA news at the end with some expansion going on. We'll talk about where they're expanding to and what that means for the future of the league. But we're going to start off our show with the NBA action from last night, talking about Luka Doncic and the Mavericks having a great fourth quarter, a controversial call late in the fourth quarter, leading to a 1-0 series lead for Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks over the Minnesota Timberwolves. Then we're going to get into the big breaking news of today with the Cavaliers firing coach JB Bickerstaff after he took them to the conference semifinals. We'll talk about why they might have done that and what the fallout might look like for the Cavaliers organization that's kind of in shambles right now. We'll finish off our NBA talk talking a little bit about the all-NBA teams that came out yesterday, going over who won first, second, third teams, snubs, and other discussions that have been going around the team. And we'll take a quick detour into the NHL, where we're going to talk about the Game 1 in the Eastern Conference Finals from last night, where we saw the Florida Panthers blank the New York Rangers, win 3-0 to put themselves up 1-0 in that series as well. So we will talk about that, and of course, like I teased in the beginning, we're going to close out our show with the WNBA expanding. But before we get into all of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have a burning question about sports, any sport you would like me to talk about, I will go ahead and answer that question for you. All you need to do is leave a comment or go to gsmcpodcast.net and leave a tip or donation. I appreciate all the support that you guys give, and I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day on a beautiful Thursday afternoon to talk some sports with me. But like I was saying, we are going to start off our show today with the NBA. Luka Doncic and the Mavericks power their way past the number 2 seed Minnesota Timberwolves for a 108-105 win. And I want to just flash forward right to the fourth quarter, because this is where things get interesting. It had been kind of a back and forth game all game long. The Timberwolves had a big lead, then the Mavericks had built themselves up a little bit of a lead. It all comes down to the end. The game is tied. It's a 2-point game, and with about a minute or two left, Karl Anthony Towns does a putback dunk to tie up the game at 104. So then it's 104-104, and the basket gets waved off. The basket gets waved off for offensive goaltending, and it is a tight call, right? If you look at the over-the-rim angle, the backboard angle, it's really close. And in situations like that, it feels like that shouldn't be called, at least in my opinion. And I don't know if that is the consensus opinion around the NBA media circles, but that feels like one of those calls that you just kind of have to let slide, because that call kind of determined the game. And we've had a lot of these kind of things happen in recent memory in the NBA and in basketball postseason games, especially with moving screens. This is a similar kind of situation to those where, maybe technically, but you don't have to call that. That's a huge play. It ties the game up instead of and the Mavericks go down and they score on the next possession, you know. So instead of, you know, going down 5, you're only down 3. You don't have to rush up a shot and then foul, and it changes the entire way you play. It changes the entire way the last minute gets played for both sides. Now, it did end up going down to the wire. Mike Conley's foul on a 3 when they're down 4. He misses one. He misses 2 of them. One of them was on purpose to try and get the rebound. But the Mavericks are able to pull this one out behind a great game from their 2 stars. This is the kind of game that earlier in the playoffs when we were talking about the Mavericks, that this is the kind of game that they're unstoppable when they get, right? You talk about a game where even though the entire team could not make threes today, you know, you look at 6 for 25 from the 3-point line, only 24%. That is not the normal shooting night for the Mavs, and they're still able to pull it out. And it's because Kyrie and Luka combined for 60 points. That is the formula for the Mavericks. The Mavericks are going to win 99% of their games if Luka and Kyrie combine for 60 plus points. You look at the Mavs record when Luka and Kyrie score 60 points in a game. It's pretty good, you know. I mean, just them on the just them together. You know, they like that. They don't have the actual list out here, but besides the point there, when those two guys are scoring points and they're both performing well, this team is nearly unstoppable. You take and you take a team like Minnesota who has really, really great defense. You know, Rudy Gobert kind of anchors that defense, and the reason that Rudy Gobert has had trouble in the past in the playoffs is because he's not a great offensive threat. And he's not great at recovery defense, right? He needs to be a rim protector, and when you get him away from the rim, he doesn't have that quick step to be able to get back to the rim like some of these other elite defenders do. But when he's protecting the rim, he is able to. Now, when you're going up against a team like the Nuggets, he's able to step out and guard a guy like Jokic, because Jokic isn't going to use his quickness to get around you. But you know, the Magic, they don't have a guy like Jokic. They have Daniel Gafford. They have Derek Lively. And both of those guys are big. You know, they're not the same offensive presence, but they can stretch the floor. Daniel Gafford and Lively both don't really play like traditional down on the block. They move around the floor a little more, and it makes life a little harder for a guy like Rudy Gobert. And we saw that a lot in this game. They got him away from the rim. They got him floating, kind of caught in no man's land, and they got a lot of lobs behind him. And it's a really good game plan by the Mavericks to be able to do that against a team with defense, with length, with switchability on defense, like the Minnesota Timberwolves have. It was very impressive to see that. So I want to give them props for how they were able to play on offense. We'll see if the Timberwolves can respond defensively. I think Luka had some freedom finally. He wasn't getting, you know, harassed defensively like Lou Dort was doing, and I know the Timberwolves are going to attempt to do that, but they don't have a Lou Dort on their team, you know, so it's not going to be the exact same situation for them. Anthony Edwards didn't have his greatest game. He's been kind of inefficient as of late. You take a look, 6 of 16. Now, it's not the most inefficient game, 5 of 12 from 3, but you want your guy to be a little bit more efficient than that, especially in a tight game like this. Jaden McDaniels had a huge first half, 19 in the first half, but his scoring output kind of returned to normal in the second half. He only had 5 points there. He finishes with a team high 24, but I think the real story here is Karl Anthony Towns. Karl Anthony Towns is a guy that needs to be more efficient with his shots. He takes 20 shots, 9 3-pointers, and for a guy as big as Karl Anthony Towns, when the Mavericks have such a big size disparity with your team as the Minnesota Timberwolves, Karl Anthony Towns is a great center. He can stretch the floor. You know, you have Rudy Gobert at center, but they have Karl Anthony Towns listed as a center forward. You know, he plays that forward position, that stretch four. But if he can get down low and cause havoc, create more spacing for these guys, which he did a good job, but he puts up 9 threes. And I know that's something that he has the ability to make. I mean, he's a guy who's won the 3-point contest before. So, it's not like it's out of his ability to shoot and make the three, but you look at his 3-point shooting over the over the conference semifinals against the Nuggets in 7 games, 1 for 6, 0 for 4, 2 for 5, 1 for 4, 4 for 5, 3 for 5, and 2 for 4. He's not shooting 9 threes a game. This is like, you're fine with him taking 5 threes a game, but 9 of them when he's also taking 20 shots inefficiently, it's just not the kind of game that, you want out of Karl Anthony Towns. Karl Anthony Towns is a guy that you want crashing the boards, getting down low, being a little more efficient, being a little more selective with his shots. Karl Anthony Towns is really important to how this team plays. He is. He's one of those guys that is kind of the barometer of this team. They kind of go as he goes. Anthony Edwards may be the superstar, but if Karl Anthony Towns has a bad, inefficient game, he kind of drags the team down with him. But if he plays well, the team plays well around him as well. So you need Karl Anthony Towns to be a little bit more efficient than he was in game 1. I think that the Timberwolves still have a chance. It's a little concerning that they didn't win a game with the Mavericks shooting 25% from 3. It's a little concerning, but I don't think that I think that their defense is going to be able to make those adjustments and be able to make the changes that they need to make against a guy like Kyrie to stop him from scoring 30 points every single game, because he hasn't been putting up those numbers every single game. I know they were kind of talking trash on him, but they did ask for them. They did ask for the Mavericks, so this is a series that they kind of have to win. Let me know what you guys think of the Timberwolves and the Mavericks here in Game 1. What you think this means for the rest of the series? I'd love to hear your thoughts. But in our next segment, we are going to move on to the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers fired their head coach, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So stick around. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Everybody in the world blind. Please don't give me a sign. A sign. Is this everybody in the world? I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the face shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up in the basement. Statement. The top is so vacant. I don't need shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Hitting my way and to be put down. It ain't replaced. All this my sound. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it. The music fits. I'm losing shit. A stupid me. If you choose to live and choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh! Losing my mind. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about Luka Doncic and the Mavs taking Game 1 against the Timberwolves in the first game of the Western Conference Finals. In this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about the Cavaliers firing JB Bickerstaff after 5 seasons, why they might have done that, and what the fallout might look like in Cleveland. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, go ahead and leave it in the comments. I will get to it as soon as I can. I appreciate you guys tuning in and watching, talking some sports with me on a beautiful Thursday afternoon. But like I was saying, let's get into JP Bickerstaff and getting fired versus, again, in the Cavaliers organization. The Cavaliers, after 5 seasons, fire JB Bickerstaff. He led them to the conference semifinals, lost in 5 games to a juggernaut of a team in the Celtics. It's a I guess you could call it a successful season here. It's one of those seasons that I'm sorry. Welcome back, Kelsey. I didn't see that before. I didn't mean to to be mean. I apologize for that. But the Cavaliers fire JB Bickerstaff after 5 seasons. He had a 100. He won 170 games. In 5 seasons, a 517 win percentage. He put together a post LeBron team that was successful. This was one of the more successful Cavaliers teams after the LeBron era, or pre or post LeBron in Cleveland in a very long time. They built a solid team defensively. They had some trouble with health all throughout the playoffs. Really in a lot of places. The firing. Yeah, it was an interesting choice, right? They had a deep run, and this firing feels more like relationship firing. You see that a lot in the NBA today, with superstars having a lot more sway, especially in the NBA, than any other major sport. You kind of have the LeBron effect, right? He's not with LeBron always, but you see it happen when he kind of started to play GM in Cleveland with the Heat. He got rid of coaches he didn't want, and we're seeing that start to take effect here as well. Donovan Mitchell is under contract for 1 more season. He has a player option after next year, I believe. So, LeBron's next coach it might be JJ Redick. It looks like, maybe. That's some talks, but it also depends if he's even coming back to the Lakers. That's a that's a whole nother discussion here, and we'll talk about that in a little bit if more news comes out there. But the Cavaliers here, the Cavaliers here. This feels more like a let's please Donovan Mitchell, because Donovan Mitchell is a guy that maybe the relationship there with Bickerstaff wasn't the greatest. We've already had a lot of drama coming out of Cleveland with multiple of their star players requesting trades. Evan Mobley says that he didn't really want to get drafted to the Cavaliers. Jarrett Allen doesn't seem that happy, and there's lots of rumors that at least 2 of their main stars have been asking for trades out of Cleveland. And it's not really a great situation to be in. A team that's kind of middling in a bad Eastern Conference. A team that you see has potential, but you're not sure if the upside for this team is championship level. Overall, a team like the Cavaliers, it doesn't really have that championship edge. Donovan Mitchell is great, and I'm a big Donovan Mitchell fan, a huge Donovan Mitchell fan, but when you take a look at what he's been able to do with the Jazz as a number 1 guy, with the Cavs as a number 1 guy, he's never really been able to get past the second round in the playoffs, and it's not for lack of help. He had Defensive Player of the Year Rudy Gobert in Utah, and I know that's not really saying a lot. I don't know if LeBron is trying to get Mitchell to LA. I don't even know if LeBron's going to play in LA next season. I think all of that depends on where his son gets drafted. But Donovan Mitchell, as good as he is, I'm not sure if he's good enough to win a championship as a number 1 guy, right? And you kind of have to weigh your options, and maybe firing Bickerstaff is the right move. This Cavs team kind of felt like they were underperforming for a lot of this series, and there were reports that players didn't want to get back on the court in the playoffs. Jared Allen didn't want to. There were reports saying he didn't want to take a shot that would basically a painkiller shot that would let him go out and play against the Celtics. Size that definitely would have helped against a Celtics team that doesn't have size right now. They didn't have Kristaps Porzingis for that entire series, and having a guy like Jared Allen to take that size advantage against the Celtics would have been huge. Not that it would have brought them over the top or anything, but there's these different options that these players don't really love playing in Cleveland. It might be time to blow it up. And when you have a team that's still relatively young in Cleveland, still has a lot of potential, a lot of growth to have, it's weird to look at and say, hey, let's blow it up. And if I'm the Cavaliers front office, that thought isn't crossing my mind. I know there's a lot of drama going on right now up there, but you can't look at this team and say, hey, it's time to let it go. This is their second real season with this core, and it's a little early to give up on it. Donovan Mitchell, like I said, he might not be able to carry this team as it is right now, but if you are able to get a nice player in the draft, there's a chance that this team could do more. They're able to improve their defense. If they can stay healthy for once, I think that could really improve. We haven't seen a healthy Cavaliers team in the playoffs. This entire season, all four of their stars, Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, and Allen, they only played 28 games together this entire season. It's not really enough to really pass judgment on this team. This is a team that has, like I said, been hit with the injury bug really badly. So I'm not ready to, call this for them, but we'll see what happens. Bickerstaff is a good defensive coach. He has the fifth most wins by a coach in Cleveland franchise history. It's a pretty good legacy to leave behind in 5 seasons. So he did a good job on this rebuild. He did a very good job on this rebuild. We'll have to see what happens. You'd have to think that Donovan Mitchell has some has some sway on who they hire, because, like I said, this hiring needs to appease the stars in the locker room if they want to continue to be a team in the East that wants to be taken seriously. Because if they pick someone that none of them like, this same kind of situation is going to happen where they're going to give up. Especially, you saw it on the road in these playoff games. They really struggled, especially in that first round against the Magic. They couldn't get anything done in Orlando. They need more offensive help, I believe. That's really what it comes down to here. They need a little bit more offensive help, and the Cavs need to get a real second weapon. Darius Garland is fine. He disappeared all playoffs long, and it didn't help when Donovan Mitchell got healthy. That's when he started to play again. So we saw some flashes. Again, it's a young team. I still believe in this Cavaliers core, but they don't scream like contenders to me, like the Knicks or the Celtics do, or even the Pacers do in the East. Now, I don't think the Pacers are really contenders, but if I'm looking at the grand scheme of things, I think they have a better shot at winning a championship than the Cavaliers do right now. So the Cavs have some work to do, and they're already kind of full up on roster, so they need to figure something out quick. I believe they can do it. Great question, Kelsey. The Celtics, I don't know if they're going to kill them tonight. I think the Celtics are going to win the game back at home, but the Pacers are a team that like to hang tough. Now, we saw them get destroyed a couple times against the Knicks in the Garden, but they hung tough. I think the Celtics are going to have a better shooting night, and I think they're going to win this game. But the Pacers should have won game 1, and the Pacers gave it away. So the Celtics should win this one, looking somewhere like not a blowout, but not like a tight game like it was in game 1. So that's my thoughts about that tonight. In our next segment coming up, we're going to finish up our NBA conversations. We're going to take a look at the all NBA teams, talk a little bit about which which players got snubbed, if they made the right choices for first, second, third teams, and everything else surrounding the discussion on the all NBA action. So stick around for that. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours, just like on your favorite cable sports channel. Except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube, absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we just finished talking about the Cavaliers firing the head coach, JB Bickerstaff, and what that means for the future of the Cavaliers. In segment 1, we talked about the Mavericks taking game 1 against the Minnesota Timberwolves, taking a game on the road. Here in this third segment, we are going to continue our NBA coverage. We're going to finish off our NBA talk for today, talking a little bit about the NBA, the all NBA teams, all NBA first, second, and third teams that came out last night. We'll talk about the voting, who got snubbed, and who benefited the most from making these teams. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have a burning question about sports, go ahead and leave it in the comments or leave a donation at gsmcpodcast.net. I'll get to it as soon as I can. Appreciate all of you sticking around, talking some sports with me on a beautiful Thursday afternoon here. But like I was saying, we are going to do a little bit of the all NBA teams breakdown today. So we'll start with the first team. First team all NBA, Giannis, Luka, Shea, Nikola Jokic, and Jason Tatum are the recipients of the All NBA First Team Award. And the biggest issue that I've seen with people on this is the distinction between Jason Tatum on the first team All NBA. I've heard some people saying Jalen Brunson should have gotten in ahead of him. Not something that I personally agree with. I think that Jason Tatum, regardless of how good the team around him is, and I'm sure that makes some kind of difference, Jalen Brunson didn't really take that next step until the playoffs. You know, he was still kind of 1A, 1B with Julius Randle for a lot of this season, and that's nothing against Jalen Brunson. He is on the second team here with Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Anthony Edwards, and Kawhi Leonard. Anthony Edwards winning his first All-NBA team. Same thing with Jalen Brunson. But, the first team, I think they did really well. You obviously have your MVP in Nikola Jokic. Luka, deservedly so. Shea, who also was second in MVP voting, deserves to be up there. And Jason Tatum was just a great player all around. Obviously, the new rule that came in with the 65-game rule for winning awards, it knocked out guys like Joel Embiid from making an appearance on here, who in all likelihood would have been a first team selection as well. It's I think they got it right in with the first team voting. Again, you could make arguments. Some of these guys have been at the top of the league for a long time. Doncic, Luka, his 5th consecutive first team selection. Giannis, his 6th consecutive first team selection, and Tatum, this is a 3rd consecutive first team selection. Shea and Jokic, both getting on the first team. I don't have really much of an issue with this. I think the voters did a great job on this, and overall, I think they did a pretty good job on all the teams. And one of the big deals with getting these All NBA selections is you get a big bonus, and that's more when it comes down to the third team, where we get some issues. Like I said, the second team consists of Jalen Brunson, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Anthony Edwards, and Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard is an interesting one. I mean, he was great. Don't get me wrong. And he did hit that 65-game mark, which is something that I don't think he's done in quite some time. So good on him for playing and being healthy. Now, he did end up missing the playoffs, which puts a little bit of a damper on this. But, all of these guys had tremendous seasons, and we're starting to see, more guys at the bottom. Devin Booker, Steph Curry, Tyrese Halliburton, LeBron James, and Domantas Sabonis got that third team. When we're taking a look at the voting ballots for all of these all NBA teams, you have guys on the ballot that didn't get in. DeMar DeRozan got a couple votes. Bam Adebayo got some votes. De'Aaron Fox, Paolo Banchero, Zion Williamson, and Victor Wembanyama is someone that I'm surprised didn't get on the list. Kelsey, my favorite team is the Wizards. Not too much to brag about here. But my favorite team is the Washington Wizards. So we'll move on from that one. We don't have to brag about we don't have to talk about the Wizards. There's nothing to talk about there with them. But the overall, one of my favorite things about NBA voting is you get to see guys that you get to see the whole ballot, and on almost every single voter list, Domantas Sabonis is getting votes. Now, he made the All-NBA third team. He had a great season, but there are some guys that got snubbed. Victor Wembanyama is a guy that I would have loved to see on one of these teams. And I know they have to go, and I know they have to go a little bit by position, but I think Wemby is a guy that you might put over Sabonis for that third team. Other people that you could say got snubbed, Tyrese Maxey, someone that had a great, if you look at seasons based, comparing them to, how much they get paid. Tyrese Maxey was the most efficient player. I saw a graph showing points per dollar made in the NBA, and Tyrese Maxey was the most efficient player for that. He's going to get paid because he had a huge season this year, really stepping up as a second option for Philadelphia, especially when keeping them afloat, especially when Joel Embiid missed a significant amount of time. But like I said, I think they did a really good job with these all NBA teams. But the one issue that I might have is Victor Wembanyama not making it. I mean, you take a look what he did. He swept Rookie of the Year. He arguably should have won Defensive Player of the Year over Rudy Gobert. And he just was a phenomenal player, putting up numbers like we have not seen. Everyone's like putting up 5x5s like it's nobody's business. He is going to break the league stats wise very, very soon, and I think it's he's the biggest snub of this season. Anybody that you guys thought were snubs, I would love to hear. Like I said, there's some other arguments you could make. Tyrese Maxey is someone. Jaylen Brown didn't get on, although with how good of a team Boston was, it's kind of hard to put two of them on, especially when they really kind of split the load. Maybe he should have gotten onto the third team, but uh, overall, I think the voters did a good job getting the right players in. You had guys like uh, Kelsey. I am based out of Virginia. You had guys like sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Uh, Overall, like I said, I think the voters did a very good job, and I think the All NBA you had guys. Excuse me, I got it back. Tyrese Halliburton and Jalen Brunson both hit their bonuses. I believe they both got $40+ million, or $40,000 added to their incentives because they made All NBA teams, and that can mean a lot to voters. They know about these clauses in the contract, and when it's close, sometimes you just want to give a guy money. Again, I don't have an issue with Tyrese Halliburton making a team. He makes a team, he gets some money, and now some of these guys are eligible for bigger contracts in the future. You're all good, Kelsey. It's no worries. Uh, I'm excited to have you active in the comments here. But anyway, overall, I think the voters did a great job. Not too many snubs this season. Not any one person that I think obviously should not have made it. But moving on, in our fourth segment, we're going to move away from basketball. We're going to move into some hockey. We had the first game of the Eastern Conference Finals take place last night between the Florida Panthers and the New York Rangers. So we will go ahead and take a look at that coming up next on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we just finished talking a little bit about the All NBA selections that came out last night. In our first two segments, we talked about the Mavericks taking a 1-0 series lead over the Timberwolves and the Cavaliers firing their head coach, JB Bickerstaff, after 5 seasons and a conference semifinals run. In this segment, we're going to move out of the NBA, talk a little bit about the world of hockey. The Stanley Cup playoffs are going on. We have also reached the conference finals. The Eastern Conference Finals Game 1 took place yesterday between the Rangers and the Florida Panthers. So we will break down that game, talk about what happened there. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. Appreciate anything you do give. We appreciate you spending time on a Thursday afternoon talking some sports with me. But like I was saying, we are going to get right into the NHL action. Talk a little bit about the Florida Panthers shutting out the New York Rangers in Game 1 of this series. You look at the box, you look at the score without having watched it. 3-0 makes it look a lot more lopsided than it already was. The 2 goals in the third period This really was a 1-0 game. There was an empty net goal, which doesn't really count in my brain, and there was also an own goal given up by the Rangers. Looks like a pass that just went awry, went into the net. So the 2 goals in the third period given up don't really count in my brain. This really was a 1-0 game, and this is the kind of game that we were expecting to see between these two. These two teams played a tough, physical game, really low scoring, and like I said, even though the final score was 3-0, final score really was 1-0 Panthers. Sergei Bobrovsky shuts out this offense for the New York Rangers, an offense that's been really hot all playoffs long. This is the one of the first playoff losses, first home playoff losses that they have suffered this entire series. I believe it's just the second one throughout the entire playoffs. So Sergei Bobrovsky played a great game. You take a look at his counterpart on the other side, Igor Shesterkin. He makes 25 saves on 26 shots, gives up the 2 goals. Again, one of them was an own goal, which you can kind of blame on him, kind of blame on Alexis Lafreniere. You could also, and then the other one was the empty netter. They had a goal late into the first period. Matthew Tkachuk gets his 5th goal of the playoffs. The guy who really powered Florida to the finals last season gets the game-winning goal here early in the game. And I think the story of this game, again, it's going to be goaltending. It always comes down to this when you have 2 of the best goaltenders squaring off against each other. Sergei Bobrovsky turns into a whole nother animal when he is, in the postseason. He's shown it 2 years in a row now at this point. And Igor Shesterkin has been on a whole nother level all postseason longs. You talk about just battle of the brick walls here. I think Florida has a slightly better offense, which might give them the edge. But if we want to look at, physicality numbers here, this was an incredibly physical game. Hits up and down the board. Jacob Trouba doing his job, getting 5 hits. Now, penalties are super important in this game. And, it didn't play a huge factor since there were no power play goals. But the Rangers did take one more penalty than the Florida Panthers did. And when we were breaking down this series at the beginning, that was going to be the difference. The difference was going to be which one of these teams can stay the most disciplined. And the Panthers hadn't been so disciplined throughout the whole playoffs, and they did a really good job in game 1. They only took 2 penalties. The Rangers took 3. Again, it didn't end up mattering because no one gave up a power play goal, but that's not something you can count on for this entire series. Both of these teams have really good power plays, really good penalty. The Rangers have a really good penalty kill, and it's gonna be one of those series where any opportunity that you get, especially with these 2 goaltenders, where they, as they've shown in this first game, have the ability to make this a 1-0 game, make this a 2-0 game, shut out the other opponent on any given night. And it's not like the Rangers got shut out for lack of opportunity, right? The Rangers were getting plenty of shots on net. They had 2 less shots on net than the Florida Panthers did. So it's very impressive to see the way that both of these goalies have been standing on their heads, keeping their team in the game. It was a great game to watch, and if you're not tuning in to watch some hockey, I highly recommend you do. I know it's a little tough with basketball going on at the same time, but this is going to be a low scoring series. We have the other series going on tonight as well between the Oilers and the Stars, and that one's going to be a little more high scoring. The Stars have a goalie and the Oilers do not, so we're gonna have to see what's going on there. We'll break that game down tomorrow, but overall, great game by both of these teams. The Panthers' offense is, I think, just better. They played a better first period, which makes a huge difference. again, their defense was great. The Florida Panthers defense was great. They were able to keep the puck out of the zone for a while against the Rangers. They keep the Rangers out of the offensive zone for a while. First shutout of the playoffs for the Florida Panthers, and you have the two teams that won their divisions going up against each other. So this is going to be a very, very tight series. So very excited to see what the rest of this series has in store for us. I don't think this like I said, this 3-0 game doesn't really tell the whole story. They pulled the goalie pretty quickly, or pretty early in that third period, trying to make up for that 2-goal deficit. So that kind of put them away after that third goal happened. But overall, great game. I think the Rangers still might be able to pull this series out. They need to get offense. Their offense disappeared there for the second period for a lot of the way in it. They didn't get a shot off for, I think, about 5 or 6 minutes. And pucks have to go on net if you want to win. The game of hockey is all about bad bounces. You get some weird bounce off of an opponent's stick or a skate. That's how you get past these great goaltenders. So pucks on net, pucks on net, pucks on net. You want great shots, but you also just want chaos up front. So Panthers take game 1. We'll see what happens in the rest of this series. These two teams are great. They were separated by 4 points in the regular season. The President's Trophy Cup winners in the Rangers, and the Atlantic Division winners in the Panthers. So we'll see what happens. Very excited to see the rest of this series going on. We're going to finish off our show in the next segment, talking a little bit about the WNBA. The WNBA is expanding to Toronto. They are adding their 14th franchise. All 13 board of governors for the WNBA franchise voted yes on it. Only one team in the NBA voted no, and that's because they are suing the Raptors in the Knicks. So we will talk about all of that, what a Toronto team would mean for the WNBA, and much more coming up next on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back, everybody, to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished breaking down the NHL action from last night. We talked a lot of basketball in our first 3 segments, going over the All-NBA selections, JB Bickerstaff being fired from the Cavaliers, and the NBA action from last night with Luka Doncic and the Mavericks taking a 1-0 series lead over the Minnesota Timberwolves. Taking that game on the road. In this segment, we are going to finish off our show today talking a little bit about the WNBA. The WNBA has expanded. They've announced a 14th team. They currently have 12. There's going to be another team added in next year, and we'll talk about these 2 expansion teams coming up in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. We appreciate everybody for tuning in and watching. If you have a burning question about sports, go ahead and leave it in the comments. Leave it in a donation. We will take a look at that, get to it as soon as I possibly can. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the WNBA expanding. So the WNBA actually has 12 teams right now, like I was saying a little bit in that intro. They just announced a 14th team. The 13th team is going to be playing in Las Vegas. So that's going to be the next sport going to Las Vegas following football and hockey and baseball now going. So now there's going to be a basketball team in Vegas, kind of getting their toes wet for the NBA. I know the NBA has been talking about expanding to Vegas as well. So we're going to see how that goes. The Vegas Valkyries are going to be playing starting next season. But in 2026, that's when this Toronto franchise is going to start. They don't have a team name for it yet, but there's already an NBA team up there. They know it can be supported, and it seems like, aside from this Vegas team, most of the time they're going to expand into markets that already have NBA teams, existing fan bases. It was interesting when they did the vote. Obviously, almost everybody was on board for it. The only team that wasn't was the New York Knicks, who are currently suing the Raptors over something completely unrelated to this, and they just had a little bit of a grudge because it is going to be the Raptors that are in charge of this team as well. The one interesting thing with this team moving to Canada, as far as expanding it goes, is it's not just going to be a Toronto team. Now, this is the first team outside of America. The 14th team is a Canadian team, which is cool. Usually you don't see an American league expand into Canada that quickly. But not only are they going to be playing in Toronto, but they're also going to be playing all around Canada. So they're going to be playing some games in Montreal, playing some games in Edmonton, playing all in Vancouver as well. They're saying it's not just Toronto's team, it's Canada's team. Going to play all over Canadian markets. It's the first time that any professional sports team has ever done that, to my knowledge. Usually, unless it's a traveling team, like the what's it called, the banana balls down, the banana ball down with baseball, the basketball team. I can't think of it. Doesn't matter. These more entertainment leagues rather than actual sports leagues, but they're going to travel all around Canada, play in their home base is going to be a smaller arena. It's going to be an 8,700 seat stadium right next to Scotiabank, which is where the Raptors play. And they said they could move into there if it got popular enough, but they're going to start in the smaller arena. Very exciting for the WNBA. Obviously, they're having the biggest growth. They're having their biggest growth in quite some time right now, with Caitlin Clark entering the league. And while her team is struggling at 0-5, it's good to have a lot more eyes on the WNBA than before. And expanding while you have eyes on you is exactly what you need. This isn't just a fad. I don't think. More and more people are getting into women's sports, especially women's basketball. It is a much different sport than the NBA, which is interesting to say because it's still basketball. But when you watch both of these leagues, it's less physical, although they do have that aspect of physical play. It's a lot more traditional basketball, fundamentals and stuff, and it's a lot of fun to watch. So go ahead and get into the WNBA. Now's as good a time as ever. But they are expanding. moving into more and more markets as more eyes get onto him. I believe this has already been the most watched beginning of the season for the WNBA. So congratulations to Toronto on getting a sports franchise, another sports franchise, and I'm looking forward to see how it goes. We'll follow up with that, obviously, in the future when we have more details. We don't even have a name on it right now, but WNBA is thriving. It's the beginning of the season, and yeah. Tomorrow we're gonna do some more NBA and NHL talk. Also, might do some NFL power rankings. I will also be on an NHL show with Garrison, who's the host of the golf and hockey shows here on GSMC. So tune into that. We'll be right back here, same time, same place tomorrow. Appreciate all of you for tuning in and watching. Thank you for interacting in the comments. I appreciate all of that. And I will be back on Friday. I will see you then. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a